Descartes attached numbers instead of color to geometrical points. Since numbers also measure physical quantities, the values of these quantities fill the point of the space. Then matter can penetrate into the space and become res extensa. Art and science of the Renaissance seek the harmony of the nature in the static form. Actually, for seeing the static form and the character of the Renaissance painting of the Quattrocento, I would say, because then this, I think, is an emblematic example of painting. Even the representation, of course, because here we have again the mystery of the figure of Christ. And actually, Piero della Francesca, that is a painter, but of course is also a great mathematician, just in this painting used the ratio between the two sides of this rectangle are exactly the ratio between the diagonal and the light of the square. And this is, I mean, because this incommensurable issue was very urgent for the mathematician of the Renaissance, and Piero della Francesca, and of course this problem was connected also with the representation, and in this painting, the flagellation, Piero, represent, of course, the relations between the finite world of man, of political man, and the mystery of the incarnation of Christ, but also the way in which he used the geometry is in order to give the message that the incommensurability that is there. So art and science of the Renaissance seek the harmony of nature in static form, I would say. I was about to say, not in the dynamic laws. Alexandre Koyré observed that if the Renaissance scientists replace the world of qualities with the world of quantities, and the world of the becoming with the world of the being, this is because numbers and figures are motionless. He also emphasized that while Descartes fails in his attempt to reconstruct the world on the identity of matter and space, Newton succeeded in constructing a modern physical world by recreating distance between the corpuscular matter and the empty space, and above all, by transforming mathematics in the guise of physics. In contrast with both Descartes and Newton, Leibniz's work grows out of a vision of geometry in which the law of continuity replaced the Cartesian res extensa, and a theory of nature in which organisms replace the material points of the Euclidean physics. What is particularly interesting in the present context is that Leibniz's view emerged from what is called a doctrine of shadows. The doctrine of shadows, as Leibniz says, is nothing but a reverse perspective. It's drawn from perspective once the light replaces the eye, the opaque replaces the object, and the shadows replaces the projection. While the Renaissance painters, think in particular of painters like Piero della Francesca or Albrecht Dürer, regard perspective as an art of measure drawn from Euclidean geometry, Leibniz asked perspective to guide the construction of geometry itself. Pondering over the construction of geometry, he realized that something is missing. Imagine, he wrote, taking 2 points in space, hence conceiving the indeterminate straight line through them. One thing is that each point is regarded individually as single. Another thing is that both are regarded as simultaneously existing. Beside the 2 points, something else is needed for seeing them as coexistent in their respective positions. When we consider one of these 2 points as if we took its position and look at the other point, what the mind determines is called direction. So 2 points don't determine a line, because in order to draw a line, something else is needed. This something else is or the principle of continuity or the intuition of the motion that goes from one point to the other. So what Leibniz is stressing is that the elements of geometry actually are not sufficient to construct geometry. There is something missing, and what is missing is the principle of continuity. Yes, what is missing in the elements of geometry is the principle of continuity. How Leibniz put it, the continuum is also where parts are indefinite or solely mentally designed. So between the 2 points, there is something that even the void, even the space between the 2 points has to be considered. Hence, a line is the extension described by a point's motion. In the light of continuity, what does not change through the ideal motion of a point between 2 sides, it's what is shared or what is shared by 2 points ideally separated is the direction. Focusing on the situs that a point can take, on the place that can be occupied by a point, Leibniz regards the Euclidean points as viewpoints, and therefore replace the Cartesian res extensa, the extending thing, with a subject extended oneself. Yes, he said, as the extension is just something abstract, it requires a thing to be extended. It needs a subject, as it's something concerning that subject. It's not something abstract. I mean, Leibniz is a critic. It's critical. It's going what it. I mean, the polemical objective of Leibniz is the res extensa and the geometry, the Cartesian geometry, in which there is this distinction between the res cogitans and the res extensa. In the organism of Leibniz, there is not this distinction altogether. As the extension is just something abstract, it requires a thing to be extended. It needs a subject, as it is something concerning this subject, like a duration. It also presupposes something in this subject. It presupposes a quality, an attribute, a nature that extends itself, stretches itself, that continues in this subject. The extension is the diffusion of such a quality or nature. Whereas Descartes saw the spatial extension as an inert substance and used real numbers as coordinates of the point in a given space, Leibniz breathes continuity into geometrical points, which become active subjects. Hence, in a point's view, the extension of space coincides with its visual field. All this implies a suggestive reversal of the epistemological issues that no longer lies in making objective the representation of a shadowless world on a fixed mathematical cage, but rather in looking for a consistent view along the path of shadows.